Thanks, Don, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back in the LIVEX industry. Got some of the best people in agriculture in Australia involved in it, and yeah, this includes all of you. So it's okay to smile and pat yourselves on the back and all that sort of stuff. So we've got a panel session here today. I'm going to allow these three people to come on up and grab your seats on the stage, and then I'll let you introduce yourselves if you'd like. But while you're doing that, the session this afternoon is to understand a little bit about advocating or advocacy and influence in the sector. And we've got three people from three different organisations, all of course in the red meat sector, to talk a little bit about that. So they all had questions to prepare for this afternoon's session. I've just advised them that I'm not using any of them. So what I also want to see is a bit of audience participation. This is the last session of the day, and you're not to be going to sleep. And so I want you to think about some questions you may have. They could be difficult questions, they could be pointed questions. We'll take all comers. So I'll leave about 10 minutes at the end for that to occur. So if you've got a burning question, start thinking about it now. But Kat, we might start with you, just a brief introduction. We know where you're from. As to you and who you are and how you got to where you are.
Thanks, Matt. I assume these are working. Yep. So my background is as a veterinarian in South Australia. Grew up on my parents' cattle, sheep and cropping property. Underdid my graduate degree in Western Australia. Did my veterinary work in cattle and sheep, mostly in South Australia, and dairy in Victoria. And then moved across to Canberra to do policy work in animal health and welfare before the CEO position in January 2014, which I undertook for 2 years, and then have had 12 months off on maternity leave and just returned.
Thanks very much, Kat. She forgot to mention that it was twins that she had. So for those looking for your carving percentages, Kat's the one to go to. Lambing for her, of course, but carving for some of the rest of you. Jeff, tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm third generation cattle farmer. I started in dairying and then slowly moved into beef, and then moved into the feedlotting and then live export sector. So involved in all aspects of beef production, from right the way through from backgrounding right through to marketing into some international and domestic markets. And have proudly joined Cattle Council nearly 3 years ago, and representing WA for that.
Thanks, Jeff. I should also mention Jeff is stepping in pretty much last minute for Jed. So if you look up here and thought it was Jed, if you hadn't already worked that out, it is not. It's Jeff, okay? So thanks, Jeff, and thanks for taking that on at the last moment. So, but Fiona, over to you now.
Hi, I'm a live exporter of goats and also a goat producer. We have about 15,000 breeders, and we're based at Narromine and out in the Western Division of New South Wales. As I said, I'm a live exporter as well of goats, all by air freight, and my husband and I, we're just pretty passionate about the goat industry and how it's growing and what it's up to, and we look at trying to expand that as much as we can.
Thanks, Fiona. Look, I'm going to start with a question for each of you in turn, and that is about now going to more about your organisation. So, Sheepmeat Council for you, Kat. What I want to know is why your organisation exists. Why is it here, and why is your industry going to be in a better place because you're here?
Thanks, Matt. So Sheepmeat Council is the peak advocacy group for the sheep meat producers, and we've got three key roles. One of those is the advocacy role, which is providing or lobbying the federal government on behalf of sheep producers, but mostly advocating to many of our stakeholders and ensuring that we work collaboratively in the industry to achieve outcomes for producers. So that's the first role. The second role that we have is also a management role and an oversight role. So sheep producers on the transaction of sheep and lambs pay a levy, and that levy is divided between Meat and Livestock Australia, Animal Health Australia and National Residue Survey. And on behalf of the producers, we oversee how that levy is spent and ensure that we're getting the outcomes that we need. And the third role that we play is the development of the sheep industry strategic plan. And that is one of the key things that we use to oversee the role of those three service companies, the Meat and Livestock Australia, Animal Health Australia and National Residue Survey. So in terms of the second part of your question, Matt, you know, in making sure that we do the advocacy role extremely well, oversee the levy expenditure, and thirdly, have a sheep industry strategic plan. What we're trying to do is to ensure that we have collaboration and coordination along the supply chain so that we can deliver those outcomes, whether it be in marketing, whether it be in R&D or in the advocacy, you know, in the legislative components, to make sure that we get profitable industry for the future.
Great, thanks for that, Kat. Jeff, what about Cattle Council?
Yeah, look, deja vu, exactly. Haven't going to beat that one, but look, yeah, on the same lines as Sheep Council. I mean, we're in for policy and advocacy as well in Cattle Council. We're out there for the grass-fed producers as well, and in the interest of the beef industry and the producers and the everyday levy payer.
Yep. And why do you think the industry is better placed with Cattle Council?
It's about the support networks that we give and bringing the whole organisation together and bringing the industry together and trying to get some sort of a level playing field there. We're in every sector. We're in a situation where we're 100% supporting of the everyday Australian beef producer, and we want to do it to our best ability. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Fiona, what about goats and Geico?
Yes, it's very similar to what the other two have said as far as the advocacy and the like is concerned. But the Geico covers the entire goat industry, so it also covers off the meat side of it, the fibre and the milk, the dairy side of it. So we don't categorise anything. It just we look after the whole industry as a whole. It's very fragmented, and so one of our roles is to try and get information out there as quickly and as easily as we can. But we have issues with lots of small producers and then a few bigger producers, and being able to get to our information out there to all of them is a bit of a challenge.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. I want to move next to what you each see as the single largest either issue, challenge or opportunity, could be any of the above, that faces your industry. What is that, and what is your council doing about it? Fiona, we'll go the other way around and start with you.
As I said, our industry is very fragmented because it's made up of such diverse groups. But I would imagine regulatory control with some of the decisions that have been made in around traceability has been a big issue for our industry, because it's hard to get that information out to people and get them to understand the importance of traceability within the goat industry.
And what's Geico's response to that? What are you doing about that issue of regulation and traceability?
Well, we've actually been working quite closely with the sheep people as well, but we're still looking at mob-based traceability rather than electronic traceability at this stage, and working to ensure that that works.
Yeah, okay. Jeff, what about you? What do you see as the largest single challenge for cattle producers and Cattle Council? For the council itself, it's survival. I mean, it's about keeping these organisations going financially, and it's getting harder and harder. There's a lot of organisations out there that potentially probably don't need to be there, and bringing one in and trying to bring the income back into one organisation is probably has been one of our biggest stumbling blocks. But I mean, I'd like to go a little bit further than that and think that talking about the cattle industry and the cattle industry only, it's and then potentially it's goat and sheep as well, but it's supply. We're in a situation now where we've really got to knuckle down and realise some of our premium markets to supply into and keep the level or the farm gate value where it is, where it needed to be in the last 20 years. So we've got to a situation where we are attracting a value for our livestock, and it's returning to the farm gate, but it's about identifying the markets that we need to keep supplying, because let's face it, there's other countries that are delving into our market because we've attracted such a premium, but it's also
obtaining those markets and making sure that we can hold on to them and keep that price back at the farm gate. So supply is the issue, and it's about where we're going to go forward with our premium product.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And Kat, what about you? What do you see as the biggest single challenge for sheep meat?
Matt, for the Sheepmeat Council, the two of the things that we are working on are what the others have already said. But I think I'd like to take it back to more of an internal issue, and that's one of succession planning for these kind of organisations. It's a major issue for us, having people that come through, as Jeff has already said. It's about the issue of survival of the councils, funding-wise, but also having young people or new leaders that want to come into these organisations, represent their sector, and actually stand up in front of politicians and have a say. And we're finding that really difficult. So this year, Sheepmeat Council's launched a new project called the Sheep Industry Capability or Leadership Capability. It's a major project. We do have a stand out there tomorrow where there will be information available for you. But through that project, it will be 3 years. And through that project, we're training a lot of new people coming into the industry, or that are in the industry but are new to sort of the representational side, who want to be involved, just don't have the skills yet or don't know how to be involved. And that's through company directors courses, or we are running the Australian Rural Leadership Program for the sheep industry in February. It's really exciting. There's some great stuff happening, and I encourage anyone to go there. So happy to speak about any policy issues as well, but I think if we don't have the leaders coming through that are willing to stand up in front of the politicians, we can't lobby on behalf of the producers to get these changes.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. Couldn't agree more with that last statement. Sounds as though, just from what you've been saying, at the very least, there's some shared challenges amongst your organisations, and potentially some shared challenges amongst your industries. And I know, for anyone who's been in this long enough and seen some of Luke Bowen's spaghetti diagrams and all of that sort of stuff, what are your thoughts on if there's shared challenges there? Do we need to rethink? And we've got your organisations, a number of others, RMAC, you keep rolling them off, and some of the internal pressures on you are about survival of your own organisation. So, should we be putting any further thought to how to align, work together a little better, all of these sorts of things? Are they the sorts of things that are crossing the minds of your organisations? Anyone would like to go?
Well, initially, already the Goat Council tries to work in with the Sheep Council in particular. There's a lot of crossovers there with some of the issues that are facing all of us. So, and our own levy base is quite small in comparison to the cattle and sheep industries. So we've really got to pick and choose what we do. And if we don't want to reinvent the wheel every time, so if we can collaborate with other organisations, we do.
Okay. Yeah. Other thoughts?
It's about. Obviously the beef industry's got the 3 different sectors, which is live, processing, and those sort of things. But it's about in our situation where your levies are shared between the right organisation. It's about, like I said before, these markets that we have an option now that we should be shifting some of those and making sure that the funds are going into the right areas and the right markets that they're going to have the best outcome for the beef industry.
Yep. Okay. Kat?
Yeah, it's definitely one that's taken up the council's agenda for the last couple of years, is looking at what can we do differently to make this work better. We've been involved with the National Farmers Federation review of agricultural representation, and we still are involved in that process. There's no final outcomes of that, but we watch that and stay involved in it. We also have worked with, as Fiona said, with the Goat Industry Council and the wool producers to work out what synergies we have and how we can work better together. We share an office with the Cattle Council and the Australian Live Export Council, and work where we can in those roles. But I think one of the key things is working out what organisations are needed and why. And we've even had some studies done to look at which ones should we be putting in which box and pulling it here and putting it there. With your spaghetti diagram, how we can actually sort of shift them around. And one of the issues is you take away the peak industry councils, you take away that opportunity for the producers to have a helicopter approach. And when I talk about a helicopter approach, you could have a consultative board just to look at Meat and Livestock Australia and how they're spending that money. But they're not then overseeing how the Animal Health Australia spends the other part of the sheep industry money or the other part of the National Residue Survey. And one of the issues that I think we've had in the past is that that's been very fragmented, and with the peak industry councils, the ability of them to be able to see it as one bucket of money and be able to see it across the whole three and get those organisations working together and on projects that benefit the whole industry, we're definitely seeing some greater outcomes. So whilst I don't know the solution to it, Matt, we know it's a problem, we're working on different options, I still see that there's a key role for the peak industry councils in that space.
And do you think your responsibilities are too many? In the sense that if you're overseeing some of that spend, obviously providing that relationship you have with, very important, with MLA and LiveCorp, and at the same time, Animal Health Australia, at the same time, whatever, I can't remember now, Tri-Lam, and I keep thinking of the Six Nations, but that's rugby. The beef.
Cattle Council, Five Nations.
Five Nations.
Yep.
Yeah. Used to be Five Nations as well in rugby, but the Italians got in somehow. And you're supposed to advocate for the industry as well. Up there at Parliament, talking to ministers. We haven't even mentioned animal welfare yet. So, in all of those discussions you've been having internally, are the demands on these councils too many? Should you be, breaking off and specialising somewhere? Maybe another group working with and the likes of MLA, etc., or do you need to maintain everything you're doing now?
Look, I think every role that we play is a key role, and that's the issue, Matt. We've put everything on the table. We've looked at it in numerous ways, and I can't say, and I will be honest and say, look, I've been out of here for 12 months now on maternity leave, so I honestly don't know where everything's at the moment. And sorry, I'm not using that as a cop-out, but I haven't been involved in all the intricacies of every discussion that's going on. All I do know is that there is no final solution at this stage. But I wouldn't say that any role that Sheepmeat Council plays is easily passed off to another place. And I think that we need all those roles. I think the key thing is that we have a small number of people doing a very big amount of work for the industry, and that comes back to the project that we've put in place to try and get more people involved in the industry and having the skills so that they can actually be involved in that representational side.
Thanks. Similar thoughts or different for Fiona and Jeff?
Yeah, look, I mean, some of those organisations you mentioned, I mean, they do feed off each other, and that fragmentation can work for and against the whole organisations. But yeah, once again, it's whether those organisations can stay financial and potentially deliver the outcomes that they're there for. So as long as that can happen and organisations can stay afloat and feed off each other, I think it's definitely a plus to have that spread in the system. Yep.
And for Cattle Council, what's the solution in terms of staying afloat and continuing to do that?
Working together, shifting the funds into the right direction, and delivering the right outcomes so that you actually can attract that levy stream to come and keep the organisation in the situation.
Do you think government funding has a place in these sorts of councils, or should you avoid it like the plague?
It's definitely something that we highly vote for and try and get as much as you can, but it's not always that easy. And that's the first point of call, but after that it's falling numbers.
Okay. Did you have any views, Fiona, on this?
Pretty
or similar?
It's very similar, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about that relationship I pointed out before, which is very important between these councils, LiveCorp and MLA. Just reflect on how you think that relationship from your perspective is working, and obviously the need for those bodies to be working seamlessly together, and also clearly the flow of information between those organisations and producers. So just reflecting on how you think that's going at the moment. whoever would like to start?
Yeah, I mean, Cattle Council have a very good relationship with MLA. We run some consultative committees or subcommittee meetings. We bring up to 60 different members of all aspects of the cattle industry that come together 4 times a year, and that's probably giving us some of the best information out of the nation is coming into that in those subcommittee meetings. We have 4 different breakdowns for it, and I believe that's probably the key of information that gets fed back to MLA and into the industry from those Cattle Council committees.
Okay. Other thoughts on how that's going, Fiona?
Once again, the Goat Council certainly has a good relationship with the MLA. They have been very generous with their time and resources over the years, especially seeing the goat industry has started off quite small and has got bigger, and is still, as I said, it's fragmented, so they've had to draw in a lot of different organisations to try and to get all the information they can, and they've been very successful at that, and we're very appreciative of what they do.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Matt, like the others, I mean, our relationship with MLA is quite good. I guess the key thing that we do with MLA is similar to Cattle Council, where we provide that advice. But the key way we do that is through our strategic plan, because to be able to hold them accountable to something, we need to have a goal. And if we've got a goal for 5 years that MLA can be working towards, we can monitor them each year on how they're progressing. That's the key. And as I said before, even those other bodies, the National Residue Survey and Animal Health Australia, we can hold them accountable to that as well. If you don't, without the strategic plan, it becomes quite difficult to be able to monitor them and make sure that everything's going, especially when you get involved in the day-to-day type things, but also the strategic plan's set by the producers. So if the producers want that, we know that's the path we need to go down. So that's the key way that we do, is through that strategic plan.
Okay, 2 more questions and I'm going to go to the audience, so I hope you're ready. And I'll be picking out people who look like they're falling asleep, just to start with. This doesn't include you, Lisa, you look wide awake. So the first is, do you think all goat, sheep, cattle producers know what you do? And if not, where are the areas that you can improve in that relationship and getting that message out and communicating clearly about who you are and what you do?
Good question. Hard question. Firstly, I don't think they know what we do, and the reason I say that is because we get scrutinised quite a bit, and the door's always open. You can become a direct member, and you can learn everything about Cattle Council and get anything you want if you ask the question. And I believe that we need to be seen a little bit more, and we're trying hard at it. But if the questions are asked, you'd get the answer. So yeah, in answer to your first question, yes, we can do better, but 2, we are doing a lot within the organisation to give you the answers you want if you're a producer or in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Fiona?
I'd agree with that. There's a lot of goat producers out there that have no idea about GEICA. I know GEICA has undertaken a pretty big program for example, with their animal welfare policies, and that they've got involved with it just at the moment. There's a big social media platform that they're working on to get the information out there, because the industry has been so fragmented for so long. But they're using standard and guideline programs that they've got at the moment to get the information that they need to, but also to let them know that GEICA is there and working for them. So yeah, we still have a long way to go, and I don't think it's not an organisation that's going to, it's just impossible to meet everyone's needs, but getting out there and talking to people. Kat was talking about strategic plan. We've finished a strategic plan not long ago, and getting more people involved in that process, so it's not just the same people involved in it each time is a challenge, but it's happening. So it's small steps, but they're occurring.
Thanks, Fiona. And Kat?
Short answer is no, Matt, they don't understand, or they don't know who Sheepmeat Council is, or they don't know what role we do. And the reasons for that, I think, there are a couple of them. Firstly, I think our direct members are the state farming organisations, and so anything that we pass through to the producer actually goes through the state farming organisation. So in the producer's mind, the information is coming from Livestock South Australia or West Australia Farmers Federation. It's not coming from Sheepmeat Council. On the other side, a lot of what we do is also communicated through the National Farmers Federation, who we're a member of. So on the, in the big media, when we spend tireless amounts of efforts working on the China Free Trade Agreement, etc., a lot of that's communicated through one voice, which is important that we have that one voice, but it does come through that side. So we're sort of the middle of the sandwich, and that means that we're not as seen as much. I think the second part to that, for the reason that we're not seen as much, is because the peak councils have been limited with resources for a significant amount of time. That has meant that they've had to rationalise where they spend their money and probably haven't got out there as much and done as much as they can. We're trying to do more. We've been working with Meat and Livestock Australia and doing, producer forums, and getting out there and talking to producers. We try and make sure that we're out there, but I think it's a key issue for us is being able to show, well, who are we, why are we important to the producer, but also making sure that we don't bombard producers with too much information. As Jeff said, they can come to us at any stage, we'll open the doors, welcome them in, they can ask us any questions, but they need to know who we are first and why we're there to work for them.
Yeah, look, thanks for that. Sounds like maybe some sort of collective communication campaign might help, perhaps in the future. My final question is, and I'm sure Don here and many others in the room, I see Rick Trivet down there, if another 2011 type catastrophe had occurred, and I don't want to see it, and Don doesn't want to see it, other people don't want to see it, but if it did, I'd like to know how well placed you believe you are to respond. And I want you to think about this not individually, but collectively. Because for too long we've seen industries who face those sorts of challenges be left in a corner or left on their own by other industries and who are just wiping their brow saying, thank God it's not me. So I want you to think about this collectively as a red meat triumvirate. How, if another one happened, could be that, could be something different, but of that sort of proportion, how well placed do you believe you are collectively to respond to that sort of crisis?
Yeah, harder question. If another 2011 was to happen, out of every bad comes good, and I believe that it's set up a lot more markets for us. So potentially, Australian cattle industry relied a lot on Indonesia. There wasn't a lot of other options, and potentially it put us in a bad situation, but it also put us in a situation where we thought, what do we do if it happens again? And what's happened is naturally these other markets have evolved. It's not only because cattle numbers have become short and other markets have opened up, it's because we have got other options now. And if we were put in that situation, I think we could shift the field reasonably quick and keep the industry going.
Okay, other thoughts?
I think in terms of the response, in terms of the media and how we would address it, I think the industry is in a much better place to respond. I know, especially internally, it's brought about a lot of work to be done on, spokespeople, how we would coordinate together. And I think, as Jeff said, out of everything bad comes something good. And I think it's, made us a stronger collaborative group to be able to join together and respond to these types of things, whether it happens to be a live export issue, which I hope it's not, or whether it happens to be a disease outbreak, which I also hope it's not. But if there was an incident like that, I think we are a lot better placed. We've got the Red Meat Advisory Council, which sits above the cattle, sheep, goat and live exporters and the processing sector, who coordinates a lot of that work. And we work together a lot better in that space now.
Okay. Fiona?
Oh, I don't know if I've got my producer hat on or my live export hat on at the moment, but certainly what Jeff said, across the industry, the ties that are a lot stronger now than what they were previously to 2011, and certainly the producers are far more aware of the implications of either a LIVEX or a disease type issue. So I think the councils have done some great work in that area to try and make sure that everyone is aware of their responsibilities as part of it, not just leave it up to the organisations as well. So certainly in the goat industry, because the LIVEX is a small part of the goat industry, the majority of it is goat meat into the manufacturing sector, but they have looked at how they can best get their information out as quickly as they can, so that there's no disruption there.
Okay, I'm going to move to some questions now. Do we have anyone in the audience who's ready to go with a question or two? Now that I've walked, Rick's over here. Yep.
We heard significant comment on what the respective peak councils got out of and how they worked with MLA. I wonder what their thoughts are on LiveCorp.
Good question. Who'd like to take the question on LiveCorp?
So in terms of LiveCorp and the role of Sheepmeat Council there, so we've got the Live Export program, which is co-funded between the Live Exporters Levy and the Producer Levy. Our role is to oversee the expenditure that goes into that. My understanding is in the past, and sorry I can't speak on this year because I've just come back into it, in the past we've had absolutely no issues. We've been really happy with the program that's been happening in that space, and we're grateful for the significant amount of work that's been done in the live export markets to build those markets, because to us the live export industry is still critical to providing that diversity in our marketplace and giving the producers a viable option in the future.
Any other comments, LiveCorp?
In Cattle Council's perspective is that we have to support every form of cattle production and production systems, and whether it be grass, grain or live. I mean, it's all relative to competition, and potentially the live export industry has underpinned the market on a regular basis, and it's something that Cattle Council needs to be mindful of as far as any market that's going to help the cattle industry.
Fiona?
The goat industry, obviously because of the small number of levies, doesn't have access to huge amounts of money through LiveCorp, but they still include us in like the industry itself in any collaborative type projects that they're doing, and certainly communicate with the goat industry quite regularly, and they're pretty good at that.
Yep. Thanks, Rick. Other questions? Yes. Is that you, Heather? How are you?
I'm well. So I have to have a follow-on question to your question to the panel. It's what is, or how well placed is the commodity councils to actually first-hand check what's going on in overseas markets? Because 2011 could have been avoided if people had actually opened their eyes and judged performance against community standards. So my question is, for the commodity councils, because you're a couple of steps away, how well placed are you to check firsthand to what's going on? So what you see is actually what's going on, not what you're just being told is happening. And then what are you doing to actually ensure that practice meets Australian standards? Because in almost no market, it isn't at Australian standards now. Thanks,
Heather. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, that's potentially directed at me. Thanks, Heather. I understand. Look, potentially the industry could have been caught off guard, and I believe that we've done everything in our power to stop that from happening again. And it's about building the trust to the general public, and I believe that in the last few years that we've actually built that trust. And it's about information that comes from the industry that we've really worked hard on getting, and at any one time that if anyone wants to ask the question of the industry to what's going on, and is it going to stop from what happened in 2011, I reckon you'd get an answer. and you'd get a strong answer. And that trust is back in the general public, and we're forever in front of it. There's no day that will ever drop our guard ever again, and I believe that the answers are there, and it's only to protect our own entity in the world market that we do that, and we're passionate and loyal to our product.
So Jeff, just on the question of, I think Heather's asking about first-hand knowledge of what's happening in those markets. Now, answer that how you will. So obviously, if you can answer the question as best you can, are you confident about the first-hand knowledge? And I guess some of that will go back to your relationship with LiveCorp and MLA.
Yeah, mixing them all up. The knowledge is there, the background information is there, the reporting, the compliance is all there across not only just the cattle, but sheep and goats as well. So, yeah, I feel as though that at any one time that the question was asked, we'd be able to respond.
Okay. Kat?
I think it's well known, like, whilst we are in the production commodity, we are still heavily involved in a lot of the work that goes on, and I'm talking about, the building, SCAS, the LGAP, all the extra work that goes on. So it's not that we just step out and say to the live exporters, off you go, you deal with this. We're still there. We make sure that we have a place in those discussions and that we put forward the views of the producer. In terms of the reporting, as Jeff said, I mean, we are provided with the reporting. We also had our president and our acting CEO at the time in the Middle East just before the Eid, visiting those markets and doing that sort of in-market work. And I think that's important to make sure that we also have a place in that type of work. So, I mean, a couple of things, but, that relationship that we have built with the live export industry, with LiveCorp, with MLA, is critical to us knowing what's happening in those spaces.
Thanks, Fiona.
I sort of will be repeating what has been said, but certainly MLA and LiveCorp are very much we're very involved with what happens with those organisations as far as monitoring what is going on. We get all the information from them. Yes, I'm just repeating what the other two have just said, really. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And that's right.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks, Heather, for your question. Other questions? Ooh, come on, guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Mark Shipp, Australian Chief Veterinary Officer. We heard in the earlier session the importance of Australia's disease status as a foundation for our exports and market access. My concern is that we're not doing enough on farm biosecurity. We've got biosecurity programs, but they're largely at the industry level and they're not really getting down to farm level. Livestock biosecurity network hasn't really been picked up. I'd be appreciative of comments from the panel on how do we implement good on-farm biosecurity at the farm level.
Good. Thanks for that question. Who'd like to have a crack at that first?
Yeah, good question. And I'd like to take that a step further. I mean, given the fact that we've opened up, we've potentially set up markets for other countries to feed into, and also bring something like an FMD closer to our shores into potentially Indonesia and places like that out of the South American countries. How we eliminate that and how we stop that from happening, well, look, it's a golden question, but I believe we have got systems in place to be able to deal with that, but it is a major issue.
I can only speak within New South Wales, but certainly with LSS type programs that they're starting to operate, and they're looking specifically at different biosecurity issues within a local level. So it's not just the, industry bodies that are, industry bodies that need to look at that and operate those systems, but it's also going down to the quite local systems of your LSS and the local vets and the rangers there. I know that there's work in our own local LSS in that regard.
Fiona, Kat, any comments there?
Yeah, a very good question, Mark, because I think it's one we've all grappled with for a long time, is how do we do this? Because we saw the jurisdictions had quite a role in this space, and over time their resources have eroded and they've moved out of this space, and industry's trying to work out how we can actually assist in this space. I think from my perspective, and I've spoken about this at a couple of conferences, is how do we actually get the producer to understand the importance of biosecurity on their farm so that they actually see that it's a part of everyday business rather than just an extra thing to do. So, you know, trying to explain to my father, you know, during the MVD phase out why it was critical for him to upgrade to the latest MVD, you know, so that he could then, you know, make sure that he had market access in the future, is the same, you know, issue we face with biosecurity. Why do we need biosecurity practices on farm? To protect your own, you know, business so that you have those markets available to you in the future. And I think communicating that message to producers and getting producers to understand that is probably the critical thing, because whilst we just stand there with a top-down approach, hammering them to say, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, it doesn't make sense to them. What we need is for producers to understand the importance of the markets to them, why we need market access, how it actually increases competition in the marketplace, how it brings back returns to their farm gate, and then we might start to get some adoption of biosecurity practices. How we do that, Mark, I don't have the answer. We'll keep working on it.
Okay, thanks for your question, Mark. One last question before I hand back to Don. Yes?
Kat, can I just ask your long-term vision for the live sheep trade to the Middle East? The trade has been steadily declining for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. It's now down to 1.6 or 7 million or something per year. Whilst there are obvious synergies in the northern feeder trade into Southeast Asia, there aren't the obvious synergies with sending slaughter wethers or sheep to the Middle East. Can you foresee the time when the risks and hassles are such that the industry doesn't think it's worth investing in keeping the industry going?
I guess I'll have to answer that in saying, you know, Sheepmeat Council supports the live export trade and always has, and will continue to support those trades that, and will support the opening of trades where they see that it's viable. Now, about talking about specific trades, I'm not in a place where I can comment on specific trades at the moment. All I can say to you is that Sheepmeat Council's position is we need diversity in the marketplace, we need that competition. We will support the live trade and we'll support the opening of live trade where we know that the practices are, you know, are of a standard that is acceptable.
I can probably further on that one. I mean, Middle East has been our biggest market over the years, and with the cattle trade falling away, and it's probably not a good outcome. It is going to get worse before it gets better. But basically, with the cattle trade falling away as much as it has into the Middle East and other countries, is that a lot of those ships run with sheep as well. So they each pay their way, and while cattle numbers are falling, sheep numbers will directly fall with them. As far as opening up that market again into the Middle East, say such as Saudi, it's a sovereignty issue, and until the governments can work it out, it's not going to happen in the short term.
But can I also say on that Middle Eastern market, there's lots of different synergies happening over there as to why those markets have either closed or are shrinking. But that's not to necessarily say that will continue, given that they have some issues there with disease and how they want to arrest those issues. Means that there could be opportunities in the future. It's, you know, it's like everything waxes and wanes sort of thing.
Thanks for that. Well, I'd like you to show your appreciation and please thank our panel, Fiona, Jeff and Kat. And Don, I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks to the three members of the panel. Wonderful. Great to hear. Am I asking you, Wayne, to make some closing comments? Is that correct? Where are you? Sorry, I've lost you. Yeah. Yep, I'll let you do that, then I'll finish it off. Thanks.
Yeah, don't go too far. Look, I just wanted to express our thanks from LiveCorp, MLA and Alec for everyone to coming today. The continued strong attendance at these workshops and events just keeps demonstrating to us how important building that communication and engagement is, and it's an area that we have to keep working on. So thank you very much for making the effort to come. I know some have just come from the department office up the hill, others have come from well and truly interstate. So thank you very much for coming. We hope you've learned a lot, and thank you to everyone who's contributed today, and to Don and to Matt. So thank you, and Don.